The silk of the dress whispered against my thighs as I smoothed it down one more time, my reflection staring back at me from the full-length mirror in our bedroom. The emerald fabric clung to my curves, ending several inches above my knees, shorter than anything I'd worn in months. My fingers trembled slightly as I adjusted the thin straps, and I couldn't tell if it was excitement or fear that made my pulse quicken. Outside, the evening sky bled purple and gold through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors of our penthouse. The city sprawled beneath us like a kingdom, and in many ways, it was his kingdom. Dante Moretti didn't just live in this city. He owned it, commanded it, breathed life and death into its streets with a single word, and I was his wife. The thought still felt foreign after 6 months of marriage, like a coat that didn't quite fit right. I'd been working double shifts at Bellissimo, an exclusive restaurant in the financial district, trying to save enough money to help my younger sister with her college tuition. That's where he'd first seen me, or so he told me later. I'd been carrying a tray of champagne flutes to a private dining room, exhausted from a 14-hour day, my feet aching in heels I could barely afford. I hadn't noticed the man in the perfectly tailored charcoal suit watching me from the corner table, surrounded by men who moved when he moved, breathed when he breathed. The courtship had been swift, overwhelming, like being caught in a riptide. Dante didn't ask. He claimed. Within weeks, my tiny studio apartment had been replaced by this palace in the sky. My sister's tuition was paid in full. My mother's medical bills vanished overnight, and I'd become Mrs. Moretti, wearing rings that cost more than my childhood home. But the price of luxury was a cage made of gold. I hadn't chosen the dress to defy him. At least I didn't think I had. It had been hanging in my closet for weeks. A gift from his sister Gabriella, who'd insisted I needed something fun and youthful for the charity gala tonight. The same gala where Dante would be honored for his philanthropic contributions to the city, a beautiful lie wrapped in expensive ribbon. Everyone knew what Dante Moretti really was, but no one dared speak it aloud. The sound of the private elevator chiming made my heart leap into my throat. He was home early. I heard his footsteps before I saw him. Measured, controlled, the distinctive tap of Italian leather against marble. Then his voice, low and commanding, speaking rapid Italian into his phone. My rudimentary understanding of the language caught fragments, a shipment, a problem at the docks, someone who would regret their choices. I forced myself to breathe, to appear calm as I clasped a delicate diamond necklace around my throat. The stones were cold against my racing pulse. "Marco, handle it," Dante's voice carried from the hallway. Closer now. "I don't care what excuses Salvatore gives you." He knew the terms. The bedroom door opened, and I felt his presence before I turned around. The air itself seemed to shift when Dante entered a room, charged with an electricity that made every nerve in my body stand at attention. I caught his reflection in the mirror first. He'd loosened his tie, the top button of his white dress shirt undone, revealing a glimpse of the tattoos that decorated his chest. A sprawling family crest that spoke of blood and legacy. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and his jaw was set in that way that usually meant someone had disappointed him. Then his eyes found me in the mirror, and everything stopped. Those eyes, dark as espresso, capable of tenderness that made my knees weak and fury that could turn my blood to ice, traveled slowly down my reflection. Starting at my face, painted with more makeup than usual for the gala, down the bare curve of my shoulders, the dip of the dress's neckline, the cinched waist, and then lower, to where the hem of the emerald silk ended high on my thighs. The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled taut, ready to snap. "Elena." My name was a warning, a question, a command all wrapped into one word. I turned to face him, my chin lifting slightly in a show of confidence I didn't quite feel. "You're home early. I thought you had that meeting at the warehouse." He didn't answer. Instead, he moved toward me with that predatory grace that had both attracted and terrified me from the first moment I'd met him. His phone disappeared into his pocket, forgotten. The 2 bodyguards who'd been flanking him in the hallway knew better than to follow into our private space. Dante stopped inches from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Sandalwood, and something darker, more dangerous. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. "Who are you trying to impress?" The question was soft, almost conversational, but I heard the steel beneath the silk. My throat tightened. "No one. It's just a dress, Dante. Your sister gave it to me for—" "I know what my sister gave you." His hand reached out, fingers grazing the hem of the dress where it rested against my thigh. The touch was feather-light, but I felt it like a brand. "I'm asking why you chose to wear it tonight." "Because it's beautiful," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Because we're going to a gala, and I wanted to look nice." "Nice." He repeated the word as if tasting it, finding it bitter. His fingers traced upward, skimming the curve of my hip through the silk. "You look more than nice, Tesoro. You look like a fantasy. Like every man's fantasy." There was possession in his touch, in his voice, in the way his eyes had darkened to almost black. I'd learned to read Dante's moods like some people read the weather, necessary for survival, and right now, I was standing in the eye of a storm. "I wore it for you," I whispered, and I wasn't entirely sure if it was true or just what he needed to hear. His jaw clenched, a muscle ticking beneath the stubble that shadowed his face. "Did you?" It wasn't a question. His other hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone with surprising gentleness. "Do you know what will happen tonight, Kara? When we walk into that ballroom, and every man there sees you in this dress?" I couldn't speak. His touch rendered me mute, my body hyper-aware of every point of contact between us. "They'll look," he continued, his voice dropping lower, more intimate. "They'll imagine. They'll want what's mine. I'm not a possession," I managed, though my voice shook. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe. Or acknowledgement of my resistance. "No," he agreed, his thumb moving to trace the outline of my lips. "You're so much more than that. You're the only thing in this world I fear losing." The confession hung between us, raw and unexpected. Dante Moretti didn't admit fear. He created it. Before I could respond, his hands moved to my waist, lifting me effortlessly onto the dresser behind me. The sudden movement made me gasp, my hands instinctively gripping his shoulders for balance. He stepped between my parted knees, the fabric of the dress riding up even higher. "This dress," he murmured, his forehead resting against mine, "tells the world that my wife is the most beautiful woman they'll ever see. It also tells them she's untouchable. Because anyone who looks too long, who dares to approach you, who even thinks about touching what's mine, they'll answer to me." His possessiveness should have frightened me. Perhaps, in the beginning, it had. But somewhere along the way, I'd become addicted to being the center of Dante Moretti's universe. To being the one thing the most dangerous man in the city would burn the world down to protect. "The dress stays," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I want to wear it." For a long moment, he simply looked at me, searching my face for something. Then, slowly, a smile curved his lips. Not the cold smile he showed the world, but the real one. The one reserved only for me in our most private moments. "Then you'll wear it," he said, his hand sliding down to rest on my thighs, possessive and warm. "But you stay at my side all night, every minute. And when men look, and they will look, I want you to remember who you belong to." "I'm not who you belong with," he corrected, reading the protest in my eyes. "You belong with me, Elena, just as I belong with you." He kissed me then, swallowing whatever response I might have given, his lips claiming mine with an intensity that made the world tilt. One hand tangled in my carefully styled hair, the other pressing against the small of my back, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, I noticed something I'd missed before. The tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Something had happened, something beyond his irritation with my dress. "What's wrong?" I asked, my fingers moving to loosen his tie completely. "What happened at the meeting?" His expression shuddered slightly, the wall coming back up. "Nothing you need to worry about, Dante." He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. "A complication. Nothing I can't handle, but I saw the lie in his eyes, felt it in the way he held me just a little too tightly, as if I might disappear. In 6 months of marriage, I'd learned that Dante's world was full of complications, rival families, betrayals, violence that lurked just beneath the surface of his perfectly tailored suits and polite smiles. "We don't have to go tonight," I offered quietly. "If you need to handle, we're going." His tone left no room for argument. "I won't let them think they can disrupt my life. Our life. Them. Always an unnamed them. Shadows that haunted the edges of our existence." He helped me down from the dresser, his hands lingering on my waist a moment longer than necessary. "Finish getting ready. We leave in 30 minutes. And Elena?" I looked up at him, caught by the intensity in his gaze. "You wear that dress with pride. Let them all see what I've been blessed with. Let them choke on their envy." As he left the room to change, I caught my reflection again in the mirror. The woman staring back looked different from the exhausted waitress who'd carried champagne trays 6 months ago. She looked expensive, polished, like she belonged in this world of marble and gold. But beneath the emerald silk and diamond necklace, my heart raced with a familiar anxiety, because I'd learned that in Dante's world, nothing was ever simple. A dress was never just a dress. A gala was never just a party. And tonight, something in the air felt different, charged with a danger I couldn't name but could feel crawling beneath my skin like an electric current. I smoothed the dress one final time, the silk cool beneath my nervous fingers, and wondered what the cost of looking beautiful would be. The drive to the Grandview Hotel took 20 minutes through streets that glittered with evening rain. I sat beside Dante in the back of his armored Mercedes, watching the city lights blur past the tinted windows. His hand rested on my thigh, a warm weight that anchored me even as my nerves jangled like wind chimes in a storm. Marco, his most trusted bodyguard, drove with the silent efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Another guard, Alessandro, sat in the passenger seat, his eyes constantly scanning the streets, one hand resting near the weapon I knew was holstered beneath his jacket. This was my life now, never alone, never truly safe, always surrounded by men whose job was to kill or die for the man beside me. "You're nervous," Dante observed, his thumb tracing small circles on my leg through the silk. "I always am. At these things." I turned from the window to face him. In his tuxedo, he looked devastating, dangerous elegance personified. The bow tie was perfectly knotted, his dark hair swept back, revealing the sharp angles of his face. But it was his eyes that held me, softer now than they'd been in the bedroom, watching me with an attention that made me feel like I was the only person in his universe. "They're vipers," he said quietly. "All of them," smiling to my face while plotting behind my back. "But you—" His hand moved to cut my face. "You keep me human, Elena. You remind me there's more to life than power and blood." The confession caught me off guard. Dante rarely spoke like this, rarely let the mask slip to show the man beneath the monster everyone feared. "Then why do we go?" I asked. "Why play their games?" "Because appearance matters. Because showing weakness in my world is suicide." His jaw tightened. "And because Marco received intelligence this afternoon that Vittorio Castellano will be there tonight." The name meant nothing to me, but I felt Dante's hand tense on my thigh. "Who is he?" A problem I thought I'd handled 3 months ago. His voice had gone cold, clinical. "He runs the Castellano family's operations in the Port District. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, everything I've worked to push out of my territory." I'd learned not to flinch at these casual mentions of violence and crime. This was Dante's world, and by marrying him, I'd stepped into it with eyes wide open. Or at least, I'd tried to convince myself they were open. And he'll be at a charity gala? The absurdity of it would have made me laugh if Dante's expression hadn't been so grim. He's being honored for his contributions to youth programs. The bitterness in Dante's voice was palpable. Money laundering dressed up in a tuxedo and a tax write-off, but that's not why he's coming. He's coming to send me a message. What message? Dante's eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that made my blood run cold. Not fear, but fury barely leashed. That he's not afraid of me, that he thinks he can operate in my city without consequences. His hand moved back to my thigh, gripping slightly harder than before. That he can look at what's mine. Understanding dawned slowly. Sickeningly, he knows about me. Everyone knows about you, Tesoro. I made sure of that when I put my ring on your finger. He lifted my left hand, pressing a kiss to the massive diamond that caught the passing streetlights. You're not a secret. You're a statement. The Mercedes slowed, and through the windshield, I could see the Grandview Hotel rising before us. A castle of glass and steel, its entrance blazing with lights and surrounded by luxury cars disgorging their wealthy passengers. Photographers lined the red carpet, cameras flashing like lightning strikes. My stomach twisted. Dante, maybe I should have worn something else. No. His voice was firm, final. You wear what makes you feel powerful, what makes you feel beautiful. And if Castellano or anyone else has a problem with it, they'll deal with me. Marco pulled up to the entrance, and immediately, hotel staff rushed forward. Alessandro exited first, his experienced eyes sweeping the area before he opened Dante's door. My husband stepped out with the easy confidence of a man who owned every room he entered, then turned back to offer me his hand. The camera flashes intensified the moment I emerged from the car. The emerald dress caught the light, shimmering like water, and I heard the murmur of voices, the rapid-fire clicks of cameras. Dante's arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me close to his side, his hand splaying possessively across my hip. Smile, Cara, he murmured in my ear. Show them you're not afraid. But I was afraid. Not of the cameras or the crowd. I was afraid of the way Dante's body had tensed. The way his eyes constantly scanned the gathering. The way Marco and Alessandro had positioned themselves to create a barrier between us and the rest of the world. We walked the red carpet like royalty, Dante pausing only for the most important photographers, his smile charming and cold in equal measure. My own smile felt frozen on my face, my body hyper-aware of every gaze that lingered too long on the exposed skin of my legs, my shoulders, the curve of my neckline. Inside, the ballroom was a masterpiece of old-world elegance. Crystal chandeliers dripping light like rain, walls paneled in rich mahogany, tables draped in cream silk and adorned with centerpieces of white roses and gold accents. Classical music floated through the air, barely audible above the murmur of hundreds of conversations. And everyone turned to look at us. I felt their stares like physical touches, weighing, judging, envying. Women in designer gowns that cost more than cars assessed me with sharp eyes, wondering who this nobody was that had captured Dante Moretti's attention. Men in tuxedos that couldn't hide the predators beneath let their gazes linger on my dress, my body, before quickly looking away when they met Dante's eyes. Mr. Moretti, Mrs. Moretti, how wonderful to see you. A silver-haired man in his 60s approached, hand extended. I recognized him from the society pages. Senator Harrison, one of the many politicians who'd learned that opposing Dante Moretti was bad for one's career and health. Senator. Dante shook his hand with the precise amount of pressure, enough to convey strength, not enough to threaten. You know my wife, Elena. A pleasure, my dear. The senator's eyes barely glanced at my face before dropping to the dress, lingering just a moment too long on my legs. I felt Dante's hand tighten on my waist, his body shifting slightly to block the senator's view. The youth center renovations are proceeding on schedule? Dante's tone was pleasant, but I heard the edge beneath it, the subtle reminder of where the money for those renovations had come from. Ahead of schedule, actually. Your generosity has been... not generosity. Investment. Dante's smile didn't reach his eyes. I invest in this city's future, in its children. I'd hate to see anyone undermine that investment. The threat was delicate as lace and sharp as a knife. The senator's smile wavered. Of course not. The Oversight Committee is very thorough. I'm sure they are. Excuse us, Senator. I see Mayor Davidson, and I need to discuss the waterfront development project. We moved through the crowd like a ship cutting through water, people parting before us, their conversations pausing as we passed. Dante introduced me to a parade of faces I'd never remember. Business leaders, politicians, socialites, all of them smiling with too many teeth, all of them playing a game whose rules I barely understood. But through it all, I felt Dante's hand on me, my waist, my lower back. my hand clasped in his, a constant reminder that I was his, that he was mine, that we were a unit in this room full of predators. "You're doing beautifully," he whispered during a lull, his lips brushing my ear. "They can't take their eyes off you." "That's what I'm afraid of," I admitted. His low chuckle vibrated through me. "Let them look. Let them want. It only makes me more powerful, knowing I have what they all desire and can never touch." We were approaching our table, prime position near the front naturally, when I felt Dante's entire body go rigid. His hand on my back pressed slightly harder, a silent command to stay close. I followed his gaze across the ballroom and saw a man watching us. He was younger than I'd expected, perhaps 40, with the kind of handsome features that would be striking if not for the coldness in his eyes. His tuxedo was expensive but flashy, a large gold watch gleaming at his wrist, his dark hair slicked back with too much product. Unlike everyone else who'd quickly looked away when Dante noticed them staring, this man held his gaze, a slight smile playing at his lips. Vittorio Castellano, even without the introduction, I knew. The way Dante's jaw clenched, the way Marco materialized at his shoulder, the way the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees, all of it screamed danger. Castellano raised his champagne glass in a mock toast, his eyes sliding from Dante to me, traveling slowly down my body with an appreciation that made my skin crawl. Then, deliberately, he smiled, not at Dante, but at me. "Stay here," Dante commanded, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Dante, here." With Marco, his eyes finally left Castellano to meet mine, and what I saw there made my breath catch. Fury, yes, but also something that looked almost like fear. "Do not move from this spot. Do you understand me?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He pressed a hard, quick kiss to my forehead, then turned and walked directly toward Castellano. The crowd seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere, conversations faltering, people subtly moving away from the path between the two men. Marco positioned himself in front of me, blocking my view, his broad shoulders a wall between me and whatever was about to happen. But I could hear Dante's voice, low and controlled, and Castellano's response, equally quiet, but laced with mockery. "She's lovely, Moretti. That dress, quite a statement. You always did have excellent taste in acquisitions. Choose your next words carefully, Vittorio. You're in my city, at my event." "Your event?" A laugh. "The Grandview belongs to the Romano family. Or have you forgotten that some territories aren't yours to claim? Nothing in this city is beyond my reach, including you." Brave words. But I notice you brought her tonight. After everything you've heard, you still parade her around like a prize? Tell me, does she know what you really are? What you've done? She knows everything she needs to know, which is more than can be said for your family, apparently. They don't seem to know their youngest son has been skimming from their shipments. Or should I say, had been, before his unfortunate accident last week. A pause. When Castellano spoke again, his voice had lost its playful edge. "You're playing a dangerous game." "I don't play games. I make examples. Remember that the next time you think about operating in my territory or looking at my wife." I couldn't see Dante's face, but I imagined the expression Castellano was facing, the one that had earned Dante his reputation, the one that promised violence with a smile. Footsteps approached, and Marco shifted slightly. Dante appeared beside me, his hand immediately finding mine, his touch gentle despite the tension radiating from every line of his body. "We're leaving," he announced. "But the dinner, your award, doesn't matter." His eyes met mine, dark and intense. "None of it matters. Only you matter, and I won't keep you in a room with that man for one more minute." As we moved toward the exit, I glanced back over my shoulder. Castellano was still watching, his expression unreadable, that slight smile still playing at his lips. And I realized with creeping dread that whatever had just happened, whatever veiled threats had been exchanged, this wasn't over. It was only beginning. The penthouse felt like a tomb when we returned, all marble and silence and shadows cast by the city lights below. Dante hadn't spoken during the drive home, his jaw clenched so tight I feared his teeth would crack, his hand gripping mine with a pressure that bordered on painful. Marco had driven faster than usual, running 2 red lights, while Alessandro kept his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian that I couldn't fully follow but understood enough to know something was very wrong. The elevator doors closed behind us with a soft chime that sounded obscenely cheerful, and suddenly, we were alone. Just me and my husband, and the rage radiating off him like heat from asphalt in summer. "Dante!" I started, but he turned so abruptly I stumbled backward in my heels. "Take it off." His voice was raw, stripped of the control he'd maintained all evening. "What?" "The dress. Take it off, now." He ran both hands through his hair, destroying the perfect style, making him look wild, dangerous. I can't look at you in it anymore. I can't think about how he looked at you. How they all looked at you. My hands trembled as they moved to the zipper at my side. "It's just a dress, Dante. It doesn't mean... It means everything." He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands covering mine, stopping me from removing it. "Don't you understand? You're not just my wife, Elena. You're my weakness. You're the one thing in this world that can destroy me, and I just put you on display for every enemy I have." His forehead dropped to rest against mine, his breathing ragged. This close, I could smell the champagne on his breath, the cologne that was fading after hours of wear, and underneath it all, the scent that was purely him. Salt and smoke, and something indefinable that made me feel safe even when I shouldn't. "What did he say to you?" I whispered. "Castellano. What did he say?" Dante's laugh was bitter, humorless, enough to remind me that protection is an illusion, that no matter how many men I have, how much power I wield, there are always vulnerabilities. His hands moved to cup my face, tilting it up so I had to meet his eyes. He knows about the warehouse attack 3 months ago. He knows about the shipment we lost. He knows things only someone on the inside could know. The implication hung between us, cold and terrible. "You have a traitor. I have a traitor," he confirmed, the words tasting like poison. "Someone close enough to know our operations, our schedules. Someone I trust." His thumbs brushed across my cheekbones with devastating gentleness. "And now they know about you. Really know about you. Where you go. What you do when I'm not there. How to hurt me in the one way that would actually break me." Fear crystallized in my chest, sharp as glass. "What are we going to do?" "You're not going anywhere alone. Not anymore." His voice had shifted back to that commanding tone, the one that brokered no argument. "Marco or Alessandro will be with you every moment I'm not. The penthouse security is being upgraded. New cameras, new codes, new protocols. And you don't leave this building without telling me first. Dante, that's non-negotiable." His eyes blazed. "I won't lose you, Elena. I won't give them the satisfaction of taking from me what I value most." I wanted to argue, to insist I wasn't a prisoner, that I needed some semblance of freedom. But the fear in his eyes stopped me. Real, raw fear that had nothing to do with business or territory, and everything to do with me. "Okay," I agreed softly. "Okay." Some of the tension left his shoulders. He kissed me then, deeply, desperately, his hands tangling in my hair and destroying what remained of my updo. When we broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine again. "I should never have married you," he whispered. "I should have let you go, kept you safe from all of this, but I'm too selfish, too possessive. I saw you that night at Bellissimo, carrying those champagne glasses like they weighed nothing, exhausted but still smiling at customers who didn't even see you, and I knew I'd never be able to walk away." My heart clenched. We'd never talked about that night, about why he'd pursued me with such single-minded intensity. "What made me different?" I asked. "You could have anyone. Models, actresses, women from your world who understand, because you looked at me like I was just a man." His voice cracked slightly. "Not a monster, not a king, not a wallet. Just a man. And when I told you what I was, what I did, you didn't run. You didn't judge. You just asked if I'd ever hurt someone who didn't deserve it." I remembered that conversation, 3 weeks into our whirlwind courtship. We'd been in his car, parked overlooking the harbor, and he'd laid it all out. The businesses, the violence, the blood on his hands. I should have run. Any sane person would have. And you said no, I recalled quietly. You said you only hurt people who hurt others first. I lied. The confession was stark, brutal. I've hurt people for money, for power, for looking at me wrong. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the details. But with you... His hands framed my face again. With you, I want to be the man you think I am, the one who deserves you. Tears burned behind my eyes. Dante... His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He pulled it from his pocket, his expression darkening as he read the screen. Cristo. He stepped back, already dialing. Marco, conference room, now, get Alessandro and Luca. We have a situation. What happened? The warehouse on 5th. It's on fire. He was already moving toward his office, his phone pressed to his ear, the vulnerable man from moments ago disappearing behind the mask of the ruthless boss. How bad? Do we have casualties? A pause. Get everyone out. I don't care about the inventory. Save my people. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call and turned back to me, conflict written across his features. I have to go. I know. Elena. I'll be fine. Marco and Alessandro will be with you. The building is secure. Go. But he hesitated. Caught between duty and the desire to keep me in his sight, I crossed the distance between us and placed my hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath my palm. Go handle it, I said firmly. I'll be here when you get back, I promise. He caught my hand, pressed a fierce kiss to my palm, then my wrist, then pulled me against him for one more deep kiss that tasted like goodbye and desperation and love too fierce to be safe. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. If something feels wrong, you call me immediately. Do you understand? Yes. One more kiss. This one softer, almost reverent. I love you, tesoro. Remember that, whatever happens. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing through the penthouse, the elevator chiming, and I was alone with the city lights and the silk dress that had started everything. I did as he'd asked, locking the door, checking it twice. Then I stood in the center of our living room, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt suffocating, and tried to calm my racing heart. The penthouse had never felt so empty. I changed out of the emerald dress, hanging it carefully in the closet before pulling on soft pajama pants and one of Dante's shirts, a white button-down that smelled like him and hung to my mid-thigh. Then I curled up on the sofa, unable to shake the feeling that something was shifting, that tonight had set events in motion that couldn't be stopped. My phone buzzed, a text from Dante. At the warehouse. Everyone got out safely. Fire department is here. We'll update soon. I sent back a heart emoji, knowing he'd roll his eyes at it but secretly appreciate the gesture. Minutes crawled past. I turned on the television, flipped through channels without really seeing them. My mind kept returning to Castellano's smile, the way he'd looked at me, the veiled threats in his words to Dante. Does she know what you really are? But I did know. Didn't I? I knew Dante ran illegal operations. I knew he had blood on his hands. I knew his wealth came from activities that would land him in prison if anyone could prove them. But there was a difference between knowing something abstractly and confronting the brutal reality of it. My phone rang, making me jump. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, remembering Dante's warnings, but something made me swipe to accept, pressing the phone to my ear. Hello? Breathing. Heavy, deliberate breathing on the other end. Hello? I repeated, my voice stronger than I felt. Who is this? Mrs. Moretti. The voice was male, accented. Unfamiliar. You looked beautiful tonight. That dress. Green is definitely your color. My blood turned to ice. Who is this? A friend. Someone who wants to help you understand the man you married. A pause. Did you know about the girl? The one he killed 4 years ago? You're lying. But my voice shook. Maria Castellano. She was 17. Vittorio's niece. She witnessed something she shouldn't have. And your husband, your devoted, protective husband, he silenced her. Permanently. The room spun. No. Dante wouldn't he? Ask him about Maria. Ask him why Vittorio has spent 4 years planning his revenge. Ask him why he's been so desperate to keep you safe. Because he knows what it's like to take someone's innocent loved one. The line went dead. I sat frozen, the phone slipping from my numb fingers to the sofa cushion. Maria Castellano, 17 years old. The words circled my mind like vultures. It couldn't be true. Dante had said he only hurt people who deserved it. He'd promised me, but he'd also said he'd lied about that. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the details. My hands shook as I picked up my phone again, scrolling to Dante's number. My finger hovered over the call button. I needed to hear his voice, needed him to tell me it wasn't true, that it was just Castellano's people trying to create doubt, to drive a wedge between us. But another part of me, the part that had spent 6 months in this golden cage, surrounded by bodyguards and secrets, wondered if maybe I'd been willfully blind. If maybe I'd chosen not to ask the hard questions, because I'd fallen in love with the man who'd rescued me from poverty and exhaustion and given me a life of luxury. The elevator chimed. My heart stopped. Dante shouldn't be back this soon. The warehouse was across the city, the fire still burning. It was barely past midnight. I stood slowly, every muscle tense, my eyes fixed on the elevator doors. They slid open with mechanical precision. Marco stepped out, his face grim, blood spattered across his white shirt. "Mrs. Moretti," he said, his voice heavy with something that sounded like regret. "You need to come with me. Now." "What happened? Where's Dante?" "He's at St. Michael's Hospital. There was an explosion at the warehouse. He's alive, but..." Marco's professional mask cracked slightly. "It's bad. We need to go." The world tilted on its axis. Everything else, the phone call, the accusations, the doubts, evaporated in the face of pure terror. Dante was hurt. My Dante was hurt, and I wasn't there. I was already moving, grabbing my purse, slipping my feet into the first shoes I could find. "How bad?" "Marco, tell me how bad." "Second-degree burns on his left arm. Possible concussion. Some cuts from shrapnel." He was already guiding me toward the elevator, his hand on my back. "He's been asking for you. Kept saying he needed to make sure you were safe. Even injured, even in pain, he'd been thinking of me." The elevator descended, carrying us down from our tower, and I realized with crystalline clarity that it didn't matter what Dante had done 4 years ago. It didn't matter if the accusations were true. In that moment, facing the possibility of losing him, I understood that I was already too far gone. I loved him. Whatever he was, whatever he'd done, I loved him. And that terrified me more than anything Castellano could say. St. Michael's Hospital rose against the night sky like a monument to suffering, its windows glowing yellow in the darkness. Marco's car screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance, and I was out before he'd fully stopped, my feet hitting the pavement at a run. The automatic doors hissed open, admitting me into a world of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells that made my stomach turn. A nurse looked up from her station, her expression shifting from professional concern to recognition. She knew who I was, or more accurately, whose wife I was. "Mrs. Moretti, he's in..." "Where?" I interrupted, my voice sharper than intended. "3rd floor, private wing, but the doctor is with him right now." I was already moving toward the elevator. Marco, a solid presence at my back, my heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought they might crack. Second-degree burns. Concussion. Shrapnel. The words kept repeating in my mind, each one conjuring images I couldn't bear to see. The elevator climbed with agonizing slowness. I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. Wild-eyed, pale, still wearing Dante's oversized shirt and pajama pants, my feet shoved into designer heels that didn't match. I looked like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. The doors opened onto a quiet corridor lined with expensive artwork and plush carpeting, the private wing where the wealthy came to suffer in comfort. Alessandro stood guard outside a door halfway down the hall, his expression grim but relieved when he saw me. "He's stable," he said before I could ask. The doctor's finishing up now. Let me in. Mrs. Moretti, perhaps you should wait until... Let me in. I didn't recognize my own voice, the steel in it that sounded disturbingly like Dante when he gave orders that weren't meant to be questioned. Alessandro's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside, pushing open the door. The room was dimmed, machines beeping softly in the background, and there on the hospital bed was my husband. Dante's left arm was wrapped in white bandages from wrist to shoulder, an IV line snaking into his right arm, a butterfly bandage above his eyebrow where something had cut him. His face was pale beneath its usual olive tone, jaw shadowed with stubble, his dark hair matted with what looked like ash and blood. But his eyes, those dark eyes that could promise death or devotion in equal measure, they opened when I entered, finding me immediately, and something in my chest cracked at the relief I saw there. Elena. My name was a prayer, a benediction. Thank God. Are you hurt? Did anyone... I'm fine. I crossed to him in 3 quick strides, my hand reaching for his uninjured one, threading our fingers together. You're the one in the hospital bed, and you're asking if I'm hurt. Always. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. Always you first. A doctor emerged from the shadows. Dr. Russo, according to his name tag. A man in his 50s with kind eyes and tired lines around his mouth. Mrs. Moretti, your husband is very lucky. The burns are painful, but will heal. The concussion is mild. We'll keep him overnight for observation, but he should be able to go home tomorrow. The explosion, I said, not taking my eyes off Dante. What happened? That's what I'd like to know. A new voice, cold and authoritative, came from the doorway. I turned to see 2 men in dark suits, badges clipped to their belts. Detectives. My blood went cold. Detective Morrison, Detective Chen, the first one introduced, his eyes moving between Dante and me with undisguised suspicion. We have some questions about the fire at your warehouse, Mr. Moretti. Dante's hand tightened on mine. Talk to my lawyer. It's just a few questions. Witnesses say the fire started in multiple locations simultaneously. That suggests arson, and given your business associations, we thought you might have information about who would want to target you. Dozens of people, Dante said flatly. I'm a successful businessman. That creates enemies. Successful businessman. Detective Morrison's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. Is that what we're calling it now, Mr. Moretti? We've been investigating your operations without a warrant or evidence, apparently. Marco had entered behind me, his phone already pressed to his ear. Mr. Moretti's attorney will be here in 15 minutes. Until then, this conversation is over. We're just trying to help, Detective Chen said, softer than his partner. Someone tried to kill you tonight, Mr. Moretti. Might even try again. If you cooperate with us, I don't need your help. Dante's voice was cold steel. I handle my own problems. The detectives exchanged glances. Morrison pulled out a business card, setting it on the bedside table. When you change your mind, and you will, call us, before this city burns down around you. They left, their footsteps echoing down the corridor, and I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. They're watching you, I said quietly. The police are watching you. They've always been watching, Tesoro. They just can't prove anything. Dante shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. Come here. I need to hold you. I hesitated, afraid of hurting him, but his eyes pleaded, and I couldn't deny him. Carefully, I climbed onto the narrow hospital bed, tucking myself against his right side, my head resting on his shoulder. His uninjured arm wrapped around me, pulling me close, and I felt him breathe out like he'd been holding his breath since the explosion. I thought I'd lost you, he murmured into my hair. When that first explosion hit, when the flames, I thought I wouldn't get to see you again. Wouldn't get to tell you that tonight, when we left that gala, I'd decided to get out. I pulled back slightly to look at his face. What? The business. All of it. I have enough money to last 10 lifetimes. I have offshore accounts, legitimate investments, properties around the world. I can walk away. His hand came up to cup my cheek. For you, Elena, I can walk away from all of it and just be a man with his wife, living a quiet life somewhere far from here. Tears blurred my vision. Dante, you can't just... People like Castellano won't let you go. Your family won't let you go. I'm the head of this family. What I say goes. But there was doubt in his eyes, the acknowledgement that it wasn't that simple. I almost died tonight, Kara. I stared at those flames, felt the heat trying to consume me. And all I could think about was you. About coming home to you. About having a life that's more than violence and looking over my shoulder. Someone called me tonight. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. While you were at the warehouse, they told me about a girl. Maria Castellano. Dante's entire body went rigid. His hand fell from my face, his eyes shuddering in that way that meant walls going up, defenses engaging. What did they tell you? That she was 17, that she saw something she shouldn't have. That you... My voice broke. That you killed her. The silence stretched between us, heavy as a shroud. Dante stared at the ceiling, his jaw working, and I saw the war playing out across his features. The desire to lie, to protect me from the truth, warring with something else. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe the nearness of death, making him too tired to maintain the fiction. Her name was Maria, he finally said, his voice hollow. She was Vittorio's niece, and she did see something. A meeting between me and the Romanos, negotiating territory. She took photos, was going to give them to the FBI. My heart hammered. And I had a choice. Let her expose an alliance that would have started a war that would have killed hundreds, or... He closed his eyes. I didn't pull the trigger myself. I gave the order to have her scared, her phone taken, the photos deleted. That's all. But the men I sent, they got overzealous. There was a struggle. She fell, hit her head. By the time they called me, she was already dead. The room spun. I wanted to pull away, to run, to unsee and unhear everything he'd just confessed. But I remained frozen, pressed against him, feeling his heart beat steady and strong beneath my ear. She was innocent, I whispered. She was collateral damage in a war she didn't understand. His voice cracked. And I have lived with that guilt every single day since. I see her face when I close my eyes. I hear her mother's screams at the funeral. I know what I am, Elena. I know I'm a monster. That's why I want out, because I don't want to become worse. I don't want our children, if we have them, to grow up with a father who has that kind of blood on his hands. Our children. The casual mention of a future I'd barely let myself imagine made something twist in my chest. Vittorio wants revenge, I said. He wants me to suffer the way he suffered. To lose someone I love the way he lost Maria. Dante's arm tightened around me almost painfully. That's why tonight, the explosion wasn't meant to kill me. It was a warning. He's telling me he can reach me, hurt me, take from me whenever he chooses. Then we run. The decision crystallized in my mind with sudden clarity. We leave tonight. We disappear. You have money, resources. We can go somewhere he'll never find us. And live our whole lives looking over our shoulders? Never trusting anyone? Always waiting for the knife in the dark? He turned his head to look at me, his eyes blazing despite his injuries. That's not a life, Tesoro. That's just a different kind of prison. Then what do? We end it. Once and for all. His jaw set with determination. I meet with Vittorio. I offer him what he wants, which is justice. The word hung between us like a death sentence. I turn myself in. I confess to Maria's death. I go to prison, and he gets to watch me suffer behind bars for the rest of my life. In exchange, you go free. You take everything I have, and you live. Really live. Without this world touching you ever again. No. The word exploded from me. I sat up, ignoring his wince as I moved. Absolutely not. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. It's not your choice. The hell it isn't. I'm your wife, Dante. For better or worse, remember? You don't get to make that decision without me. Elena? No. I was crying now. Hot tears streaming down my face. You want to know why I didn't run when you told me what you were? It's not because I'm naive or stupid or blinded by money. It's because I saw who you really are beneath all the violence and fear. I saw the man who pays his employees double, and makes sure their kids have scholarships. I saw the man who cried when Mrs. Chen from the flower shop died and paid for her funeral. I saw the man who holds me like I'm precious when the nightmares wake him at 3 a.m. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. You made a terrible mistake, I continued, my voice shaking but firm. A girl died because of choices you made. But sacrificing yourself won't bring her back. It won't heal Vittorio's pain. It'll just create more suffering. Then what? His voice broke. What do I do, Elena? How do I make this right? I took his face in both my hands, forcing him to look at me. We face it together. We find another way. Maybe we can't make peace with Vittorio, but we can get out, disappear, start over, change our names, our faces if we have to. But I'm not losing you to some misguided attempt at redemption. They'll come after us. He won't stop. Then we stay ahead of them. You're Dante Moretti. You've outsmarted every enemy you've ever had. You'll outsmart him too. We'll outsmart him. Together. Something shifted in his expression. Hope warring with despair. Love tangled with fear. You'd really run with me? Give up everything for a life on the move? I'd give up everything for you. The truth of it rang through me like a bell. You're not my prison, Dante. You're my freedom. Before you, I was drowning in poverty and exhaustion and invisibility. You saw me when no one else did. You made me feel alive. So yes, I'll run with you to the ends of the earth if that's what it takes. He pulled me down into a kiss that tasted like tears and medicine, and promises we might not be able to keep. When we broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. Tomorrow, he whispered. We make plans tomorrow. Tonight, just stay with me. Let me hold you and pretend the world outside this room doesn't exist. Tomorrow, I agreed. I settled back against him, careful of his injuries, and listened to the steady beep of the monitors, the distant sounds of the hospital, the rhythm of his breathing gradually slowing as exhaustion claimed him. But sleep eluded me. My mind raced with possibilities, with fears, with the weight of the decision we'd made. We were going to run. We were going to leave everything behind and disappear into whatever life we could build from the ashes of this one. And somewhere in the city, Vittorio Castellano was planning his next move, his revenge for a girl who died 4 years ago, and I couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow might come too late. Morning arrived with weak sunlight filtering through the hospital window, painting everything in shades of gray and gold. I dozed fitfully through the night, waking every time Dante shifted or the monitors beeped, my body refusing to fully surrender to sleep while he lay injured beside me. Doctor. Russo arrived at 7, checking Dante's vitals with efficient movements, and pronounced him well enough to leave. Change the bandages twice daily. Keep the wounds clean. And for God's sake, take it easy for at least a week, he instructed, though we all knew Dante would ignore the last part. By 8, we were in the car. A different vehicle than last night. One I didn't recognize, with bulletproof glass, and a driver I'd never seen before. Marco sat in the passenger seat, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid-fire Italian about security protocols and personnel rotations. Dante sat beside me in the back, his bandaged arm resting carefully in his lap, his good hand clasped tightly around mine. He'd been quiet since waking, his eyes constantly scanning the streets we passed, that heightened awareness that came from years of looking over his shoulder. "Where are we going?" I asked when I realized we weren't heading toward the penthouse. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere no one knows about." His thumb traced circles on my palm, a nervous gesture I'd never seen from him before. "I need to make arrangements, gather what we'll need before we disappear." The car turned down a narrow street in the old manufacturing district, pulling up to what looked like an abandoned warehouse. But when the reinforced door rolled up at Marco's signal, I saw it was anything but abandoned. Inside was pristine, a climate-controlled space filled with filing cabinets, computers, and a conference table where 3 men stood waiting. I recognized one of them, Giovanni Moretti, Dante's uncle and consigliere, a silver-haired man in his 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The other 2 were younger, harder, their suits unable to hide the violence they carried like a second skin. "Dante." Giovanni's greeting was warm but concerned as he took in his nephew's injuries. Thank God you're alive. When we heard about the explosion, it was Castellano. Dante's voice was flat, final. He's declared war, and I'm ending it before anyone else gets hurt. How? Giovanni's eyes flickered to me, calculation in their depths. You know he won't stop until he has his revenge. I know. Dante pulled me closer to his side. That's why Elena and I are leaving, tonight. We disappear, start over somewhere he can't reach us. The silence that followed was deafening. You can't be serious, one of the younger men said. Luca, I remembered, Dante's cousin. You're the head of this family. You can't just abandon. Watch me. Dante's tone could have cut glass. I've given 20 years of my life to this family, to this business. I've bled for it, killed for it, lost my soul for it. No more. What about us? Giovanni's voice remained calm, but I heard the steel beneath. What about the territories, the alliances, the hundreds of people who depend on our protection? You'll take over. You've always been the brains behind the operation anyway. Dante moved to the table, pulling out a leather portfolio with his good hand. I've prepared everything. Transfers of power, liquidation of assets, offshore account access. Half goes to the family operations, half comes with us. Dante, think about what you're doing. Giovanni stepped closer, his voice dropping to something almost paternal. Running makes you look weak. Castellano will see it as proof he's won. The other families will sense vulnerability and move in. Everything your father built, everything you've protected, it'll collapse. Then let it collapse. The words exploded from Dante, raw and desperate. I don't care anymore, Giovanni. I came within minutes of dying last night, and all I could think about was her. He pulled me against him, his arm around my waist. She's the only thing that matters, the only thing that's ever really mattered. Giovanni's eyes met mine, assessing, judging. You know what he's giving up for you, girl? The power, the respect, the legacy? I know. My voice was steadier than I felt, and I've told him we'll face it together. Whatever comes, noble sentiments. His smile was cold. But you're both fools if you think Castellano will let this go. He's spent 4 years planning his revenge. He won't stop just because you've run away. Then what do you suggest? I challenged, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. That Dante turn himself in? Sacrifice himself for a mistake made years ago? I suggest we eliminate the threat. Giovanni's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Castellano wants war? We give him war. We hit him so hard, so completely, that there's nothing left of his operation to threaten us. No. Dante's refusal was immediate. That starts a cascade. The other families get involved. Innocent people get caught in the crossfire. The police crack down on everyone. I won't be responsible for that bloodbath. Then you're signing your own death warrant. Giovanni's expression was almost pitying. There's no neutral ground here, nephew. You either fight or you die. Running just postpones the inevitable. The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of traffic outside. I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on us, suffocating in its complexity. Giovanni was right. Running solved nothing, but fighting meant more death, more violence, more innocent lives destroyed like Maria Castellanos. My mind raced, turning over the problem from every angle, and suddenly, impossibly, I saw a third option. What if we give him what he really wants? I said quietly. Every eye in the room turned to me. Elena, Dante started, but I squeezed his hand, silencing him. Not you, I said. Not your life or your confession. What Vittorio Castellano really wants is acknowledgement, justice for his niece, proof that her death mattered. We're not admitting to murder, Luca said flatly. We don't have to. My heart hammered as the plan formed. What if instead of running or fighting, we meet with him? Dante and I, face to face, no weapons, neutral ground. We acknowledge what happened to Maria. We offer genuine remorse and restitution. Not blood money, but something meaningful. A foundation in her name, scholarships for girls in her neighborhood, something that honors her memory and helps others. He'll kill us both on sight, Marco said from the doorway. Maybe. I looked at Dante. seeing the conflict in his eyes. Or maybe he's tired too. Maybe he's spent 4 years consumed by grief and rage, and what he really needs is for someone to see his pain, to validate that his niece's life mattered. It's too risky, Giovanni argued. You're betting everything on the hope that a man who's orchestrated attacks and explosions will suddenly become reasonable. I'm betting on the fact that revenge is exhausting. I thought of the phone call, the voice telling me about Maria. The person who called me last night, they wanted me to know the truth. They wanted me to understand Vittorio's pain. That's not the action of someone who just wants blood. That's someone who wants to be heard. Dante stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, he turned to Giovanni. Set up the meeting. Neutral location. Public enough that he can't risk open violence. Tell him I want to talk about Maria. Dante, this is insane. Do it. There was finality in his voice, the tone that had commanded respect and fear for 2 decades. And if he refuses, if he shows up planning to kill us, then we run, we disappear, and the family is yours to lead. But I have to try this first. I have to know if there's a way forward that doesn't involve more death. Giovanni studied his nephew for a long moment, then sighed deeply. You've changed. She's changed you. Yes, Dante agreed simply. She has. 3 hours later, we stood in the sculpture garden of the Museum of Modern Art, surrounded by twisted metal and abstract stone, tourists drifting past like ghosts. It was public enough to be safe, private enough to talk. Dante had insisted I stay in the car, but I'd refused, and eventually, he'd stopped arguing. Marco and Alessandro flanked us at a distance, their eyes constantly scanning. Across the garden, I saw Vittorio Castellano approaching with his own guards, his expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. He was younger than I'd expected up close, mid-40s, with the kind of Mediterranean handsomeness that would have been attractive if not for the hardness around his mouth, the way his hands stayed loose at his sides like he was ready to reach for a weapon. He stopped 10 feet away, his eyes moving from Dante to me and back. You're either very brave or very stupid, Moretti. Probably both. Dante's voice was steady despite the bandages visible beneath his jacket sleeve. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I almost didn't. Vittorio's gaze fixed on me, but I was curious why you'd bring your pretty wife to what could easily become a crime scene. Because she's the one who insisted on this meeting, Dante said. And because what I have to say requires a witness. Vittorio's eyebrow arched. I'm listening. Dante took a breath, and I felt him steady himself, preparing to say words that would cost him pride but might save our lives. 4 years ago, my men killed your niece, Maria Castellano. She was 17 years old, and she died because I gave an order without thinking through all the consequences. I've told myself it was business, that she was a threat to operations that supported hundreds of families, but the truth is simpler and uglier. A girl died because I valued my empire more than her life. The garden seemed to hold its breath. Tourists moved past us, oblivious to the drama unfolding between the sculptures. That's supposed to fix it? Vittorio's voice was raw. An apology? 4 years later? No. Dante's hand found mine, gripping tightly. Nothing fixes it. Nothing brings her back. But I want you to know that I see her. I remember her, and I'm sorry. Truly. Deeply sorry for the pain I've caused you and your family. Sorry doesn't rebuild a life. But Vittorio's voice had lost some of its edge, grief bleeding through the anger. She was going to be a doctor. She wanted to help people. And she's gone because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I know. Dante's voice broke. I have her picture on my desk. I look at it every day to remind myself what my choices cost. It's not penance. Nothing could be. But it's acknowledgement that she mattered. That her life had value beyond my business. Vittorio removed his sunglasses, and I saw his eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. Why now? Why this meeting? Because I almost died last night, and I realized I don't want to live like this anymore. The violence, the revenge, the endless cycle of blood, I'm done. My wife and I are leaving this life. But before we go, I wanted to offer you something more than apologies. What could you possibly offer me? A foundation in Maria's name, I said, speaking for the first time. Vittorio's attention snapped to me. Full funding for scholarships for girls in her neighborhood who want to pursue medicine. A community center with her name on it, offering resources for families. Something that keeps her memory alive and helps others the way she wanted to help people. Blood money. Vittorio spat. Yes, I agreed, but blood money that could do genuine good. That could mean other girls get the chance Maria never had. It doesn't erase what happened, but it honors who she was. Silence stretched between us. A child's laugh echoed from somewhere nearby, obscenely cheerful against the gravity of our conversation. And if I refuse? Vittorio asked quietly. If I say the only justice is watching you die the way she died? Then you kill us, and the cycle continues. Dante's voice was steady. You get your revenge. But Maria stays a tragedy, a footnote in gang violence. The foundation never gets built. The girls in her neighborhood never get those scholarships. And eventually, someone comes after you for killing me, and more people die, and it never ends. Or, I added softly, you let us walk away. You take the foundation, build something meaningful in your niece's memory, and you get to be the uncle who honored her by creating something good from something terrible. Vittorio stared at us for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket. Marco and Alessandro tensed, hands moving toward their weapons. But Vittorio pulled out only a photograph, worn at the edges from handling. This is Maria, he said, holding it so we could see. A teenage girl with dark curls and a bright smile, wearing a graduation gown. This was taken 3 months before she died. She'd just finished high school early, was about to start pre-med. My throat tightened. She looked so young, so full of life. I've spent 4 years thinking about how to make you suffer, Vittorio continued, his voice thick. I've planned, schemed, burned your warehouse, tried to blow you up, and none of it has made me feel better. None of it has brought her back or filled the hole her death left in our family. He carefully tucked the photo back into his jacket, over his heart. My sister, Maria's mother. She didn't even come to my birthday last month, because looking at me reminds her that I failed to protect her daughter. She's lost a child and a brother because I've been too consumed by revenge to be there for her grief. Then be there now, Dante said quietly. Take what I'm offering. Build something that would make Maria proud. Let her death mean something more than just another casualty in a gang war. Vittorio's jaw worked, emotions playing across his face. Rage, grief, exhaustion, and finally, something that might have been resignation. How much? $5 million to start the foundation. Another $2 million annually in perpetuity, structured through trusts, so it continues even after I'm gone. Dante's voice was businesslike, but I heard the hope beneath it. You control the foundation, decide how the money's used, hire the staff. I want no part in it except signing the checks. This is for Maria, not for my conscience. And you just walk away? Leave the life? Tonight. We're already packed. New identities, new city, new life. Dante squeezed my hand. I've done enough damage. It's time to see if I can be something other than a monster. Another long silence. Then Vittorio nodded slowly. I'll take your money. I'll build the foundation. But understand this. If I ever hear you've gone back to the life, if I ever see the Moretti name connected to violence again, our deal is void. I will come for you, and no amount of money will save you. Agreed. Dante extended his hand. Vittorio stared at it for a moment, then clasped it firmly. Not a friendly handshake, but an acknowledgement. A peace treaty written in pain and money, and the memory of a girl who deserved better. There's one more thing, I said, surprising both men. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. I didn't know Maria, but I wrote this for her anyway, for the foundation's dedication ceremony, whenever you're ready. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. Vittorio took the envelope, turning it over in his hands. What is it? A letter. An acknowledgement that she existed, that she mattered, that her dreams deserved to come true. My voice shook. I can't give her back her life, but I can make sure her name is spoken with respect and love instead of just being a story of violence. Something shifted in Vittorio's expression. Not forgiveness, but perhaps the first step toward letting go. Thank you, he said. And I thought he might have meant it. The sun was setting as we drove away from the museum, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed too beautiful for the weight of what we'd just done. Dante sat beside me in silence, his good hand still clasped in mine, watching the city slide past the window. "Is it really over?" I asked quietly. "The war with Castellano? Yes, I think so." He turned to look at me, and I saw tears tracking down his face. "Everything else? I don't know. We still have to disappear, start over. I'll probably never stop looking over my shoulder. But we're alive, and we're together, and we're together," he agreed, pulling me against him. "That's more than I deserve." We drove to a private airfield on the edge of the city where a small jet waited, fueled and ready. Giovanni was there, his expression still disapproving but resigned, holding documents that would transfer control of the Moretti operations to him. "Last chance to change your mind," Giovanni said, as Dante signed away his empire with quick strokes of a pen. "I've never been more certain of anything." Dante looked at me. "Except marrying her." The jet's engines hummed to life. We climbed the stairs and I paused at the top to look back at the city skyline. All those lights representing lives I'd never touch, stories I'd never know, a world that would spin on without us. "Any regrets?" Dante asked, his arm around my waist. I thought about my tiny apartment, my sister's tuition bills, the exhaustion of carrying champagne trays. I thought about the emerald dress and the gala and Vittorio's grief-stricken eyes. I thought about Maria Castellano, who never got the chance to become a doctor, and the foundation that would bear her name. "No," I said, and meant it. No regrets, only hope. We stepped into the jet together, and the door sealed behind us with a soft hydraulic hiss. Through the window, I watched the city shrink as we lifted into the twilight sky, all those towers and streets and secrets growing smaller, until they disappeared into the gathering dark. Dante pulled me onto his lap, careful of his injured arm, his forehead resting against mine. "Where do you want to go? We can go anywhere. Europe, South America, Asia, anywhere you've dreamed of, somewhere quiet," I said, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Somewhere we can wake up without bodyguards. Somewhere I can learn who Dante Moretti is when he's not being a mob boss. I don't know if I know how to be anything else. Then we'll figure it out together. We'll make mistakes, probably mess up 1,000 times. But we'll do it together." He kissed me softly, sweetly, like we had all the time in the world. Because finally, maybe we did. No empires to protect, no enemies plotting, no blood debts hanging over us. Just two people and an uncertain future, and the fragile hope that love might be enough. The jet climbed higher, carrying us away from everything we'd known toward something we couldn't yet name. Behind us, a city full of violence and secrets. Ahead, only possibility. I settled against Dante's chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong and alive. The man who'd seen me when I was invisible. The monster who'd become my salvation. The husband who'd given up everything for a chance at redemption. "I love you," I whispered against his neck. "Whatever comes next, I love you." His arms tightened around me, and I felt his breath catch. "I love you too, Tesoro. More than power, more than empire, more than anything." The jet banked gently, turning east toward the stars that were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. And somewhere below us, in a museum sculpture garden, a peace treaty held together by grief and money and hope. Somewhere in the city, Giovanni was already restructuring operations, making the Moretti family legitimate. And somewhere, in a quiet neighborhood, Vittorio Castellano was looking at his niece's photograph, and maybe, just maybe, thinking about scholarships instead of revenge. We'd given up everything familiar, but gained something we'd never had before. Freedom. The freedom to wake without fear, to love without violence, to build a life that wasn't measured in territory and blood. The cabin lights dimmed as we reached cruising altitude. Dante shifted us to the bed at the back of the jet, pulling me close, his bandaged arm resting carefully across my waist. Through the window, stars scattered across the velvet sky like diamonds, infinite and indifferent to the tiny dramas playing out below. "Tell me about the life you want," Dante murmured, his voice drowsy. "The one we're flying toward. A house with a garden," I said, painting pictures with words, books and music, maybe a dog. Mornings where we drink coffee on a porch and watch the sunrise. A life where the most exciting thing that happens is deciding what to make for dinner. Sounds boring. Sounds perfect. His quiet laugh vibrated through me. Then perfect it is. We drifted into sleep as the jet carried us through the night. Two people who'd walked through fire and somehow survived. The emerald dress that had started everything hung in a garment bag in the overhead compartment. A reminder of who we'd been, a relic of a life we were leaving behind. Tomorrow we'd land in Barcelona, where new identities and a villa overlooking the Mediterranean waited. Tomorrow we'd begin the hard work of building a life from scratch, learning to be ordinary people instead of king and queen of an underworld empire. But tonight, 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, wrapped in each other's arms, we were simply Dante and Elena, two souls who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen light. The future remained unwritten, uncertain, full of challenges we couldn't yet imagine, but we'd face it together, and that was enough. That was everything.